Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. We'll be conducting this on Zoom, and it's being live streamed on YouTube as well. On tonight's agenda, we've got 3 public hearings, 3 letters of recommendation, 1 information report, 1 correspondence item, and 2 other items. A roll call of commission members, please.
Commissioner Helfrey.
Here.
Commissioner Ward.
Here.
Commissioner Cohn.
Zoomed.
Commissioner Boyles. Thank you, sir.
Here.
Commissioner Boyle. Thank you. Commissioner Clayton. Commissioner Depler.
Here.
Commissioner Jackson. Chair Beatty.
Here.
Councilmember Brost. And Mayor Boland.
Thank you. Let's see here. Can I get an approval of the minutes from April 4th, please?
I move that we accept the minutes as presented.
Thank you, Commissioner Ward. Seconded by Commissioner Cohn. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Minutes pass.
Thank you.
Does the Department of Planning have any opening comments?
No, sir, but thank you for asking.
Thank you. All right. We'll enter public comment session. If anyone in the public would like to speak before any of the non-public hearing items on tonight's agenda, now is your chance. Please use the raise hand feature in Zoom and we will promote you to a panelist. And I see that Mr. Ron Petruska has raised his hand, so I will let him go first. And then anyone else, as they raise your hand, will follow.
Mr. Chair, just
Yes,
a
sir.
couple of things before we have Mr. Petruska speak. First, the mayor just advised the department that he is running a little late, but he intends to be at the meeting shortly. And then secondly, as the commission is aware, each speaker is given up to 5 minutes to provide their comments. And within that 5 minutes, the department will keep track. And therefore, when we get to about a minute, the department will do its best to just let you know. And then at the end of the 5 minutes, we'll basically announce that as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
And Mr. Chair, I'll bring in Mr. Petruska.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Newberry.
Good evening.
Good evening. State your name and address and then go ahead with your comments.
Okay, my name is Ron Petruska. I live at 17009 Fallstone Mill Court in Stone Mill. My property is one of the 4 lots that are adjacent to the southern boundary of the proposed Ashley Grove development. Previously, I spoke at the last 2 Zoom committee meetings and also submitted 2 emails to the committee concerning a water pressure and lot size issues related to the proposed development. I won't take 5 minutes, actually. It'll be very quick, but I have the following request of each member of this committee prior to you voting to either recommend or not recommend the proposed development in its current form. Last night, the trustees of Stone Mill and also the spokesman for the Wesley Park residents sent an email to each committee member. The email outlines how the residents in the adjacent subdivisions feel about the latest proposal, and it also states why we feel that the current version of the proposal is unacceptable to the residents in the adjacent homes. I won't take up your time to reiterate the contents of that email since it's been sent to all you folks. However, I strongly request that each committee member carefully review the contents of that email and take them into consideration prior to casting their vote. Last summer, the mayor stated that the homes built in the proposed development would be of comparable sizes, architectural features and value of construction that were required by the city of Wildwood when Stone Mill and Wesley Park were approved to be constructed. The items stated in last night's email will accomplish this and will also be fair to the existing homeowners in the adjacent home sites to the proposed development. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else who would like to speak for the public comment session?
Mr. Chair, no one has raised their hand at this time, but I'll just give the prompt one more time. With your permission, if anybody would like to speak during the public comment session, please use the raise hand feature on Zoom. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Newberry. All right, seeing no hands, we'll move on to our public hearings. In the city of Wildwood, public hearings are truly intended to accept comments and questions concerning these items tonight. Since these requests are being presented at a public hearing, no action is planned on these items tonight, and consideration of them will be taken no earlier than June 6, 2022. This approach ensures the members of the Planning and Zoning Commission will hear all opinions before taking any action. The city's Department of Planning will address the comments, questions, and concerns that are raised tonight and include them as part of their formal recommendation to the Planning and Zoning Commission. The commission will allow all parties adequate time to present their position. Those in attendance via the Zoom webinar platform should use the raise hand feature to indicate you wish to speak at this hearing. A team member will add you to the list of speakers that will then be communicated to me as chair, and I will invite you to speak when it is your turn. In addition, information on these items can be found on the city's website at www.cityofwildwood.com. The commission would like to thank you for your cooperation and participation at tonight's hearings. First up, PZ 3-22. Tarl Vetter.
Mr. Chair, PZ 3-22, Tarl Vetter, 19301 Babbler Forest Road, Wildwood, Missouri, 63005, care of Sun Pro Solar, LLC, 2531 North Patterson Avenue, Springfield, Missouri, 65803. A request for a conditional use permit in the NU non-urban resident district, street address 19301 Babbler Forest Road, locator number 21Y410116, for the installation of roof-mounted solar panels, which are to be so situated on the dwelling as to be visible from the adjoining roadway. The request is to be reviewed in accordance with Chapter 415.090 NU Non-Urban Resident District Regulations of the City of Wildwood Zoning Ordinance, which establishes standards and requirements for the installation of solar panels. The requested permit is required due to the panel's placement on the side-facing area of the roofs of the dwelling, thereby causing them to be visible from the adjoining roadway. This particular property is located in Ward 1. And Mr. Chair, with your permission, before Mr. Newberry provides the slide presentation, the department would like to enter into the record the following items: the city's charter, the city's master plan, the city's zoning ordinance, Chapter 415 of the Municipal Code, inclusive of Chapter 415.090 NU Non-Urban District Regulations, and Chapter 415.500 Conditional Use Permit Procedures. The file that has been developed by the Department of Planning regarding this request and all contents contained therein. And then finally, any testimony, exhibits, plats, maps, or other items offered as part of testimony tonight at the hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vunich. Mr. Newberry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, the department would like to provide a brief slideshow presentation to familiarize the commission members as well as those attending tonight's meeting with the subject site. The first slide is an aerial of the site, which is, I'm circling here with the red cursor on Babbler Forest Road, which is a private street that runs west of off of Wild Horse Creek Road here. The next image is just a closer zoomed in aerial shot of the subject site, mostly wooded. Here you can see the configuration of the home along Babbler Forest Road. The next slide is a photograph of standing in the petitioner's driveway looking towards the west on Babbler Forest Road. Again, standing in the same location looking towards the east as the road heads toward Wild Horse Creek Road. The next slide is a sheet from the plan sheet submitted that show the configuration of the solar panels as proposed on the front of the home. This exhibit here shows the overall lot with the blue highlighted on the panels to be placed in the front of the home. This is a closer image to show the placement of the panels as planned. The next is a photograph of the home itself. This area here on the roof is where the solar panels are proposed to be placed. The next few images are views from Babbler Forest Road. This is standing west of the petitioner's home, looking towards the east. This is standing to the east of the petitioner's home, looking towards the west, towards the home, to the northwest. And this is again that roof line where the solar panels are proposed to be placed. And that concludes the department's presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Newberry. Does anyone on the commission have any comments?
Mr. Chair, if the representative from SunPro Solar or the property owner would like to raise their hand, Mr. Newberry or I will promote them. Mr. Chair, there appears not to be anybody. Oh, there we are.
Mr. Bill Arthur.
And Mr. Chair, we'll just need to be clear that Mr. Arthur is representing the petitioner, not wanting to speak during the public comment.
Okay. Wait, Mr. Arthur is not wanting to speak, or the petitioner is not?
Sorry, we were just trying to get the Zoom cut out just a second ago.
Okay.
Just as you asked for anybody to speak, it went away. Like,
Wonders of technology.
no, sorry. I just want to say, yeah. I just want to say that I appreciate the opportunity. We just were pursuing this in big part because of as we've moved out here for 2 years now, we've had problems with reliability on our power. And so this was a way for us to make sure that when power goes out, we actually have water and things, because that's, on a well, we don't have water when the power goes out. So beyond that, yeah, just I think the thought is we're not really visible by any of our neighbors. And so we kind of hope that would be a pretty easy discussion in terms of impact to the neighborhood.
All right. Thank you for your comments.
And Mr. Chair, Mr. Arthur did raise his hand and was promoted, so I need him to be next.
Okay, yeah. Mr. Arthur, is there anything you would like to say?
Yeah, didn't have anything. Didn't have anything in particular. Just wanted to let you know I was available.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, are there any questions from the commission members?
Commissioner Helfrey?
I don't have any questions, and so I guess about this, my question would be to Mr. Vunich. Are you looking for a motion to close if no one has questions?
Yes, ma'am. If there are no questions from the commission members and we've heard from the public via our attendees, then yes, the department would respectfully request a motion to close the public hearing.
Okay. If there's no other comments, then I'll make a motion to close it.
Seconded by Commissioner Ward. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Any abstentions? All right, thank you very much. The public hearing is closed. And appreciate you coming on, Mr. and Mrs. Vetter.
You.
Probably see you in a month. All right. Next on the agenda, we have PZ 4-22. And looks like Mr. Vunich, you'll be reading this one.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chair, members of the commission, the next public hearing item is a response to a request regarding St. Louis County PC 39-94, the Grover Company, amended C8 Plan Commercial District, parenthetical workplace district of the Town Center Regulating Plan, north side of Manchester Road, west of Taylor Road, street address 16917 Manchester Road, locator number 24V540163, which seeks a modification to the site-specific governing ordinance to allow for the use of a portion of the subject site for an outdoor area for open play by pets of patrons visiting the business, i.e. pet runs. This additional requested use would be in conjunction with the current store for retail purposes, pet supplies, and the planned future coffee shop or cafe. This particular site is located in Ward 8. And again, Mr. Newberry has a slide presentation that he has prepared for the commission. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Vunich. Mr. Newberry?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, the commission will be familiar with this site as it approved an amended site development plan for it at its last meeting for some additional parking area. The department slideshow presentation is just to, again, show the site as it is today. The first photo that's displayed is the front of the site. The commission will recall the additional parking areas planned in this location where my cursor is. The next photo that's displayed is that same area that was just highlighted with the cursor on the site. The photograph is taken on the site showing the area where the additional parking area is planned. Oh, sorry, clicked the wrong button. The next photograph is the east elevation of the building. Jeez. And the next photo is the west elevation of the building. And then the last photograph is, this photograph shows the rear of the building. Today, there is a walkout basement. However, the amended site development plan shows for that to be filled in and a flat area to be created at the rear of the building. This location is the primary area where the proposed play area, which is the subject of tonight's public hearing, are planned. And Mr. Chair, members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, that concludes the department's presentation. And would just note that I believe the petitioner is in attendance as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Newberry. Diana, are you the petitioner, I assume? Would you like to say anything on this?
Oh, hi. Oh, there we are. So pretty much It would be very clean. It would be very quiet. Before dogs would be allowed to go out to the back area, they would have a temperamental test. Every vaccines, of course, would be required, and guidelines would be established, like no barking. And if there are repeat offenders, then unfortunately they wouldn't be allowed in the back. And it would be very consistent with Route 66's goal of having a lot of cute mom and pop shops that people can explore on their Route 66 tours. And it would be a nice addition to Wildwood, very family oriented. And I can only promise you that it would be the cutest little dog play area that you'd ever see. And so we would appreciate your support.
All right. Thank you for your comments. Does anyone on the commission have any questions or comments? Commissioner Ward.
Can you tell me more about how you would stop them from barking, or
Well, okay,
you would
so
test them before they went out, or what?
okay, so temperamental test, only because, so obviously we're dog lovers, otherwise we wouldn't have like a dog place. But so we've joined a lot of dog like daycares and a lot of dog parks. And so a lot of places actually have you do a temperamental test where they first kind of, play with your dog and say, oh, how are you doing? They let them do a little trial run out back with the other dogs to make sure that they play nicely. And they give you a little guideline thing telling you that, if they do ever bite another dog, then, that's a zero tolerance policy. Or if they are, repeat, barking offenders, then you unfortunately have to take away, their ability to go out to that play area. And so, but being a dog membership holder, I can tell you that at most dog parks, the people that take their dogs there do it because they are very pampered dogs that don't bark and are very well behaved. And I'm a member of Happy Hounds, and I can't tell you that I've almost heard almost no dogs ever bark, for instance, at most dog parks. But we will make sure that repeat offenders are not allowed back in the play area.
And I had one other question. Are you located near somewhere where there's music being played also?
We are a couple of, we're like one house down from
the Larry's bar.
Larry's bar. They do,
What it is?
I do believe that they occasionally play music.
Okay, thank you.
And they aren't very far from like City Hall and Main Street, where we have the concerts on Main. So.
Any other questions we can answer for you guys?
So just for clarification, is this going to be like a daycare where you guys would be supervising? This is just while the customers are shopping and drinking their coffee?
Yeah, so it would be a patio where customers would be able to drink coffee and bring their dogs with them. So just another great thing to do in Wildwood for your dog lovers and their families.
Yeah, so pretty much be able to sit out back, drink your coffee, and just kind of hang out with your dog off a leash.
Okay. So the owner would have to be there.
Oh,
yes.
The owner has to be present.
Yes.
Absolutely.
All right.
And yeah, I'm sorry.
Mr. Cross, did you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Diana and Adam, it was great meeting you last Thursday.
Yeah, you too.
Thanks for coming to the Route 66 revitalization meeting. It may help for the commission to understand your operating hours when questions were about music and at Larry's Tavern and so forth. What is your closing time there at Lucky Dog Central?
6 p.m.
6 p.m. Okay. So typically the music at Larry's doesn't start until well after that, and our music at Maine starts at about that time as well. So there wouldn't be any of that, but I wanted to make sure that everybody knew their closing time. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I appreciate the clarification. And I guess one question on top of that, and then I'll come to you, Mr. Cohn. I noticed right now you're only open, I guess, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Do you plan on opening the rest of the week when you open the coffee shop? Or is that still to be decided?
May open up maybe another, if anything, maybe another weekday, but our goal is to kind of concentrate it mostly towards the weekend. And that's partially just because we do have other jobs. And so we're trying to, for a lot of reasons, it'll most likely stay primarily the weekend and may add another day.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Cohn?
Is it correct that the dogs will be on leash only and there won't be any off leash or fenced in area?
So, so the goal is that we would allow a small fenced in area where the dogs could be off a leash while you drink your coffee.
But it would still be supervised by the owner.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So there'd be an on-leash part, and then there'd be a partition of another fence that you have to go through in order to get to the off-leash area.
All right, thank you for the clarification.
Are there any further questions? Is there anyone from the public who would like to speak on this? Anyone,
Mr. Chair.
Please use the raise hand feature.
Thank you.
Seeing nothing, can I get a motion to close the public hearing? Motion by Commissioner Helfrey. Second by Commissioner Doppler. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any abstentions? Public hearing is closed. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you. All right. Next on the agenda, this is 4-22. Misread the last one, but Mr. Newberry? Or I'm sorry, Mr. Vunich. Drawing a blank.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members of the commission, the last public hearing item tonight is PZ 4-22, City of Wildwood Planning and Zoning Commission, care of the Department of Planning and Parks, 16860 Main Street, Wildwood, Missouri, 63040. A request for a change in zoning of a 26.75 acre parcel of ground generally located on the west side of Hankin Road, south of its intersection with State Route 100. Street address 4064 Hankin Road, locator number 26Y340014, from the NU non-urban resident district to the PS Park and Scenic District. The subject property was donated to the city by its previous owner and currently has several existing structures and buildings on the property, inclusive of a single-family dwelling and a number of accessory sheds. The deed restrictions established by the donor set out the conditions associated with the future uses of the property, which include such being free of charge, it being maintained as an undeveloped wildlife refuge and preserved for the purposes of picnicking, bird watching, hiking, fishing, hunting, shooting, and killing not being permitted, the property remaining in its natural state, and such being named Pertner Park. This particular site is located in Ward 6. Mr. Chair, Mr. Newberry has a few slides he'd like to show at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vunich. Mr. Newberry?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, if you'll just give me one moment, the mayor has asked me to send him the meeting information.
Okay.
Thank you for your patience to all.
Hey, Travis, while you're doing that, your Outlook invite, I know it said 6 on the email, but your Outlook invite still saying 6:30. If you would change that, that's what I was going off of.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson.
In the future, and that's on me because it's only been 6 o'clock forever, so it's like not your fault, it's mine.
I figure I'd forgotten about that, so we'll get that fixed first thing tomorrow.
Commissioner Helfrey, did you have something?
Mr. Vunich, what is this zone right now, just out of curiosity?
Commissioner Helfrey, it's zone NU non-urban resident district. Mr. Duber, I believe Mayor Boland is with us, so if you'd like to do your slide presentation.
Thank you. Mr. Chair and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, the department has prepared a brief slideshow presentation regarding this property. The property is irregular in shape, and I'm highlighting it here with the cursor. Its frontage is along a curvy section of Henkin Road. The next slide is a view of Henkin Road, standing at the driveway of property, looking to the north towards State Route 100. The next image is standing in the same location, looking to the south. And the next image is standing across the street from the property on Henkin Road, looking towards the west. You can see a portion of the home. This is actually the garage area of the home. The next picture shows a more full extent of the front elevation of the home that's on the property. And then the next photograph shows a little bit more of the front elevation from this perspective, and then the south elevation of the home. And this shows the rear of the home. I'm going to go back to the first slide real briefly. I just want to bring to your attention on the property this large open field area on the property, and then as it has a finger that goes toward a cleared area that goes towards Henkin Road. This image is looking north on that field area. This is the northern tree line that you saw on the aerial. And this is looking towards the west, the tree line that's defined here in that field area. And this is looking more towards the east, that area that goes towards Henkin Road of the field. And then this is standing at the same location that the previous three photographs were taken, looking towards the home. Again, this is that north elevation, the garage area. You can see where the department's truck was parked in the previous photos. And then the final photograph is just one of the large outbuildings that are currently on the property. And that concludes the department's presentation.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Newberry. Let's see here. Is there a petitioner in attendance on this, or is this strictly city?
This is the city of Wildwood, sir.
Okay.
And with your permission, I have a very brief couple of statements.
Go right ahead, please.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, as noted in the advertisement, this particular property was donated to the city by a lady named Joanne Yost. It is almost 27 acres in size and does have a set of restrictions associated with it. Those restrictions control how the property will be used. Those restrictions are not in conflict with the proposed rezoning to the Park and Scenic District. The Park and Scenic District is the appropriate zoning district designation for the site, since it is a public park, and will allow the city to utilize it for those purposes while providing to surrounding property owners assurances that it will be used for public purposes, keeping with Mrs. Yost's wishes. If there are any questions or comments, Mr. Cross, Mr. Young, Mr. Newberry, Ms. Ripito, and I are available. Again, the city took possession of this property in September 2021. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Ward?
So the buildings on the property, what is the intended use for the house and the outbuildings?
Commissioner Ward, that's a very good question about the house. It is a relatively new house. It's a little over 20 years in age. Certainly, there are some options that have been offered. Ultimately, though, that process will require engaging the folks that live in the vicinity of the property, as well as the Planning and Zoning Commission, the Planning and Parks Committee, the City Council, and ultimately the City Council and Mayor. The outbuildings, some are in not very good shape, deteriorated. Those will probably be removed. Any that can be salvaged certainly would be salvaged because they offer storage. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, and we maintain those. So the city will maintain the house or, keep it up to not livable standards, but for useful standards, I guess.
Well, certainly that is the goal of the city and particularly the Department of Planning and Parks is to ensure that the dwelling is maintained so that if there is a use that ultimately is decided upon by the collective number of entities, that it's available there and ready to go.
Thank you.
So I've got to ask, I saw that hiking is permitted, hunting and fishing are not. What about equestrians or bicycles on the property?
Well, a group of local equestrians have already posed that question to the city, and ultimately a review by the city attorney of the restrictions determined that equestrians would not be consistent with the intent of the donation. In terms of bicyclists, I'm not sure. I would have to defer to Mr. Young, and I'm sure he would need a little time to consider that. And certainly we'll answer that question as part of the department's report with recommendation.
Thank you. And then does that property, does it touch either Greensfelder or Rockwoods?
Mr. Chair, it does not. There's an intervening property between it and Greensfelder. And so certainly that's an opportunity if we could make such a connection, but there is no common boundary right now.
Okay, thank you for that. Commissioner Jackson?
Do we have a Parks and Recreation, someone responsible for that will oversee the parks and everything else? I'm not sure.
It is the Department of Planning and Parks, and it starts with the director, then goes to the assistant director, but the primary person is the superintendent of Parks and Recreation. That individual is responsible to make sure everything's maintained to a high standard and is safe for people to use. Currently, the position is vacant, but we are in the process of a hiring effort.
Not that I'm advocating it, but you got a house, that'd be a nice perk to get someone hired, right? I see that happen in certain cities. If they maintain the parks, someone can stay on the parks. I'd be okay to give you flexibility to do that, Mayor Boland. If we need to write that in there for when you're hiring for the city council, that's 2 cents.
St. Louis County does that in several locations where they allow the park superintendent to reside in a former dwelling.
Any further comments? Anyone from the public who would like to speak on this, please use the raise hand feature. Seeing none, can I get a motion to close the public hearing? Motion by Commissioner Helfrey. Seconded by Commissioner Clayton. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion's closed. The public hearing is closed, I'm sorry. Thank you very much. All right, next on the agenda, we have PZ 28-21, Travis or Mr. Newberry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. PZ 28-21, Ashley Grove, Cypress Real Estate LLC, care of Daniel Stegman, 16100 Swingley Ridge Road, Suite 210, Chesterfield, Missouri, 63017. A request for a change in zoning from the NU non-urban residence district to the R3 10,000 square foot residence district with a planned residential development overlay district, PRD, for a 5-acre parcel of ground that is designated the Neighborhood Edge District of the Town Center Regulating Plan and located on the west side of Center Avenue, south of its intersection with Manchester Road. Street address 2623 Center Avenue, St. Louis County locator number 24V420032. Proposed use, a total of 12 new single-family dwellings along with the retention of the existing residents, thereby totaling 13 units, all being on individual lots of record with street improvements, common ground, and required public space areas. Ward 8.
Thank you, Mr. Newberry. Mr. Vunich.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members of the commission, tonight the department is presenting two items for your consideration. First, an addendum to the letter of recommendation relating to the request as read into the record by Mr. Newberry. And then finally, a draft of the letter of recommendation relating to this particular request. Two key dates I want to reference before the department provides a very brief summary of the changes to the plan. First, on March 7th, the Planning and Zoning Commission voted 8-0 to support the change in zoning and the application of the overlay district contingent upon all of the new lots and dwellings associated with them being served by side entry garages. Again, that was on March 7th. At the April 4th meeting, the department prepared the draft letter of recommendation, and as part of that, a late discussion was held on the fact that 3 of the new lots could not accommodate all of the garage bays being side entry. 2 could be accommodated side entry, but 1 would have to be front entry toward the new internal street. The petitioner did provide a plan very late in the afternoon on Monday, April 4th, but the department, nor did the commission, in the department's opinion, have ample time to study it. Therefore, on April 4th, the commission postponed the matter. Tonight, the commission does have available to it a schematic of what that 2-in-1 garage design appears like on one of the lots. And again, it's important to emphasize that 8 of the lots would be served by all side entry and 3 would have 2-in-1 design. The reason behind the request is relative to grades and the fact that as part of this process, we've terminated access to Center Avenue and required the developer to install a T turnaround. The department just wants to summarize the key facts relating to this particular project. From the onset, there have been concerns by the commission members and the surrounding public about access to Center Avenue of the new internal street. That access was prohibited. Therefore, in lieu of the access to Center Avenue, a T turnaround was added. As part of the commission's initial action, the number of lots was reduced from a total of 13 to 12. That number 12 includes Mr. Schlempler, the current owner of the property's existing dwelling that is served off of Center Avenue. As part of the lot reduction, the lot widths were increased to almost 100 feet, consistent with the general pattern in the area. Also, the current design, as proposed by the petitioner, has 8 side entry side entry garages with an association with the dwellings and 3 that are not. Also, the petitioner has reworked the right-of-way to ensure that it accommodates safe ingress and egress for the Metro West Fire Protection District. All told, the project has undergone significant changes, but tonight, the key question to the Planning and Zoning Commission relates to, does the petitioner have a valid reasons for the request for 3 lots having the 2+1 garage design? If the commission supports such, the letter of recommendation is in that appropriate form to accommodate such. If the commission chooses not to support the 2-in-1 garage design, the letter of recommendation would be modified to reflect such. With that, Mr. Chair, the department has completed its presentation. It is available for any comments or questions, and thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vunich. Mayor Boland.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just had a couple of questions. My understanding, and this is to you, Mr. Vunich, my understanding is that relative to the 3 lots that would be changed to have front entry, that the reason for that is from a topographic engineering/engineering standpoint, it's simply not possible to do site entry. Is that a correct conclusion, basically?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, that's how it was explained by a petitioner's engineer.
Okay. And then my second question is, we had a comment that came through the email today from a member or from a resident that is near this proposed development relative to the absence of elevations concerning what the front entry would look like. But I see in the material that's been provided by the department that there are what appear to be representative homes as to how those would look. Is that also accurate, that that's how the front entry would look?
I'm sorry, my apologies. No, sir, Mr. Mayor. The department was attempting to find in Wildwood that 2-in-1 garage design. The photographs that were provided are from the Manors at the Enclaves on Manchester Road, a Claymont development project. Mr. Stegman is the land developer. I understand that he has been discussing this project with different builders. Mr. Faulkner, his representative, is on the call tonight. I don't know if they found a builder per se, but again, the photographs are not the elevations that are being proposed. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And I understand that. I'm just, what I'm after is, in general, is that, I mean, I'm assuming you put those to be representative of what it would likely look like, you know, given what you know, having worked with the developer on this project up to this point. So all I'm trying to get at is, I guess the question is, do we as a commission have a general understanding based on those photographs or something that Mr. Faulkner can provide to us as to what the front entry on those 3 homes that they apparently cannot do side entry garages, what those would roughly look like? That's what I'm at.
Mr. Mayor, I believe that's a good representation of the 2-in-1 garage design. And so from that perspective, it creates a courtyard almost. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And just a clarification, it's 2 side entry, 1 front entry on the garage.
That's correct, Mr. Chair. 2-in-1.
Commissioner Helfrey?
Thank you, Chair. So I pulled up these drawings, and these look like these are over in that Cherry Hill area neighborhood. Is that right? And you guys went and got these pictures. So I guess I'm not understanding engineering from an engineering standpoint, why they can't do 3 side entry garages, because these are all, the garages are all level in these pictures. And so I guess I'm trying to wrap my head around what is making it not be allowed to be complete side entry garages like we required the surrounding neighborhoods. My next comment is that I think that I'm wondering, is it normal protocol that we have elevations provided from the builder at this stage of the game? And if so, why don't we have those? And then I did have another question. And another question I had was regarding the document I was reading here. Apologies, because I'm scrolling through this on my other computer so I can see it. There was a letter from one of the trustees to you, Mr. Vunich, and Mr. Bolin, and I think Mr. Garantano. And the trustee stated that the person who had this property said that they had to have so many homes or they were not going to build this. And but the number of homes aren't jiving with what is being provided to us right now. So I'm just I want to just make sure I have a full understanding of this. And I believe it's on page 52. So those are my questions. But most importantly would be how the 3-car garage versus the 2-in-1 works regarding these pictures. And do builders normally at this point, have they normally provided us with elevations? Thank you.
Ms. Helfrey, with the chair's permission, I'll respond as best I can.
Go ahead, Mr. Vunich.
First and foremost, I think the necessity of the 3 lots having the 2-in-1 garage design is premised on 3 factors. First, as mentioned, with the inclusion of the T turnaround, that changed the entire character of the eastern end of the site. And so from that perspective, there are certain requirements that have to be met to ensure that it is safe access and usable access for the primary customer, which is the Metro West Fire Protection District. The same holds true on the western end, that southern lot on the south side of the new street next to West Avenue. They're trying to compensate for the grade differences that exist between existing site and West Avenue, which can't necessarily be changed radically, and still provide access to the two properties that are currently served by West Avenue, the Brown properties. The second component relates to stormwater management. And again, as you know, the rear yard areas are key in terms of transporting stormwater through a system of swales to area inlets. And so part of the rationale, again, and that those two locations is just trying to ensure stormwater management is appropriate. And then finally, it is in part from the department's perspective, and a combination of topography, as the mayor had mentioned. And again, just from that perspective, the Center Avenue is a certain elevation. The site will be lowered to a certain degree. And so from that perspective, just making the topography work so that the lots are relatively usable and the grades are associated with driveways are appropriate. So those are the factors I see. In terms of, do we usually have architectural elevations? Almost in all instances, when a builder is proposing a rezoning, we have those elevations, or at least what they're thinking about providing. In this case, we have a land developer, but not the builder. So it is a little out of the ordinary, but certainly once a builder is identified, the elevations then can be provided and should be expected at the very latest as part of the site development plan process. And again, in terms of the number of homes, the department, for advertising purposes and in introducing things for the purposes of tonight's discussion or any discussion on this particular site, we use the original advertisement. We don't change it as changes are made by the commission. So it reads 13 lots. But as you know, we've reduced the lot count by 1. And so what is being proposed tonight is 12. The 12 number is inclusive of Mr. Schumpler's existing home.
Thank you very much for your patience with me, because now I have a follow-up question. And so you said, sorry, you stated that this is for a land developer versus a builder. And so am I understanding it correctly that we're kind of approving this or not approving it, however the case goes, based on supposition that houses for the builder that he finds will actually fit on those lots? Because I guess my question is, then once we approve or don't approve this, then when they get a builder finally, can they come back in front of us and ask us to change things again? Thank you.
Well, under the current draft letter of recommendation, any builder that would accept this project would have to meet those requirements set forth in the attachment B. So certainly that's key for Mr. Stegman, the developer in this case, to ensure that whatever builder is ultimately accepts the project, that they understand the conditions associated with it. Secondly, any developer or any builder can come back and ask for amendments to an existing PRD, the overlay district. It's up to the discretion of the commission to recommend such, and then finally city council to accept it and approve it or not approve it. So you shouldn't anticipate that there won't be a time with any project that someone won't come back for a change. But in this particular instance, I think it's important that whatever is ultimately approved, the commission and the city council does its best to adhere to it so that the residents know what to expect in terms of future use.
Any further discussion on the matter? Commissioner Jackson?
The only question I have on the frontal garage, is there a scenario where there's going to be backing into traffic or anything? Is that the issue with that we need to be concerned about now?
No, sir. The apron that'll be constructed for the two side entries will serve as that turning pad for the front entry. It's not to say that our owner will just back out of the front entry and go down the street, but just remember the street terminates in a T turnaround, so there's not through traffic, and it's an 11 lot cul-de-sac as being proposed.
Okay, so that's not like the critical issue here.
Not in this instance. As you know, when homes are proposed along a collector or arterial roadway, our director of public works always requires that there be no driveway access to them. It's just not a safe situation.
Okay, so you just said it's just not a safe situation, but it's not a problem in this instance.
Because it's just a residential street versus a collector or arterial where the amount of traffic is substantially greater.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, Commissioner Cone, and then I say Commissioner Boyles next.
Yes, I just would like to make a motion to approve with the slight modification being that the only one of the garages of the three that need a side entry, B-side entry, I'm saying that wrong. Only one garage can be front entry and the other two must be side entry. Thank you.
Commissioner Boyles?
May I ask another question?
I
know
I think, point of order, I think we would need to see if there's a second to that motion. Sorry.
Okay.
I think we may have one, but I couldn't hear.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Commissioner or Mayor Bowen. All right, now Commissioner Boyles, your question.
Yes, thank you. I believe that we were talking about the two at the east end of that proposed development. What about the one on the west side? Tell me about backing out of that garage, because that's the main entrance in and out of that development.
Well, I mean, there's only 12 homes on the street, so traffic isn't going to be that big of an issue even.
Actually, my question was for Mr. Vunich, because he was answering Ms. Helfrich's question. Thank you.
Well, Commissioner Boyles, I'll defer to the chair. He manages the meeting, so if he'd like to provide an opinion, I'll certainly stand down. Thank you.
Well, I mean, that was my thought, is that, I mean, a street with 11 homes on it is not going to have a substantial amount of traffic, but Mr. Vunich can further elaborate.
We also have 3 garages in each one of those homes.
And again, the turning pattern relative to a 2-in-1 garage design, again, accommodates a fairly large area of concrete for that maneuver out of the side entries. And it would accommodate, in the opinion of the department, not backing onto the internal street, but doing it head on. I would defer to Mr. Brown. He may have more experience with this. And so if he's available and would like to respond, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good evening. I would concur that the number of homes is not going to generate a significant amount of traffic. So I'm not envisioning that would be a problem whatsoever. Certainly something we could keep our eye on as the plans are developed for the subdivision, but I just don't see that as being a significant concern, frankly.
Thank you. My next question is guests that arrive, is there on-street parking available for guests?
Mr. Broyles, yes. The recommendation is that the street width, the actual concrete or asphalt surface, would be 26.1 feet in size, which allows parking on one side of the street under Metro West Fire Protection District requirements.
Thank you for those explanations.
All right. Mayor Boland?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to ask a somewhat rhetorical question to Mr. Vinich. Given the report that he's presented to the commission, and this is not to in any way indicate that these questions are not very valuable and important, and the discussion is excellent, which it is. My question to Mr. Vinich, presumably, Joe, you've studied the safety issues, the backing out issues, and so forth. And given that we have the report from you that's indicating that this model with only these three, after the reduction from 13 to 12 residences and only these three with one of the three garages being front entry does not present a safety issue, I'm assuming that is the case, or you would not have presented that report to us. Is that correct?
That's correct, Mr. Mayor. And it's not just based on the study of the plans, but as I mentioned over at the Manors at the Enclaves, they have about 7 or 8 homes out of that 20 plus number that have this same scenario. And I've never heard a complaint, nor have I heard of any problems.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? We have a motion and a second. Roll call vote.
Commissioner Helfrey,
Yes.
Commissioner Ward,
Yes.
Commissioner Cohn,
Yes.
Commissioner Broyles,
Yes.
Commissioner Clayton,
Yes.
Commissioner Depler.
Yeah.
Commissioner Jackson. Commissioner Jackson, just once more, please. Mr. You're muted. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. Yes.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Chair Beatty,
Yes.
Mayor Boland.
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion carries. Thank you. Next on the agenda. Let's see. PZ 24-21, Mr. Newberry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. PZ 24-21, City of Wildwood Planning and Zoning Commission, care of Department of Planning, City Hall, 16860 Main Street, Wildwood, Missouri, 63040. A request for the consideration of possible changes to the regulations that are associated with Chapter 415.030 definitions, Chapter 415.090 NU non-urban residence district, Chapter 415.110 R1 1 acre residence district, Chapter 415.120 R1A 22,000 square foot residence district, Chapter 415.130 R2 15,000 square foot residence district, Chapter 415.140 R3 10,000 square foot residence district, Chapter 415.150 R4 7,500 square foot residence district, and Chapter 415.160 R6A 4,500 square feet residence district of the City of Wildwood zoning ordinances that are intended to clarify the allowances and or prohibitions for short-term rentals within this community, all wards.
Thank you, Mr. Newberry. Mr. Vunich.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members of the commission, the department has prepared for your consideration tonight a draft letter of recommendation reflective of the vote of the commission from its April 4th meeting. This particular set of changes has been reviewed by the city attorney and endorsed. In fact, some of them are from the attorney's authorship. And tonight, the letter of recommendation in draft form is ready for final action. If there are any questions or comments, the department and the city attorney are available to respond to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vunich. Mayor Bowen.
I would move that the draft report as presented be approved.
Thank you. Motion by the mayor, second by Commissioner Broyles. Any further discussion?
Yes.
Jackson?
So this would be, I know we call them short-term rentals, but this is like the Airbnb type stuff, right?
Yes, sir.
I don't know, nationally, we're seeing a lot of news in regards to some horror stories with short-term rentals. I'm just curious if the city wants to go down that road. I'll support it, but I mean, in light of what's been happening, downtown St. Louis is all over here. We see news all over the country in regards to some horror stories with that. And I'm just wondering if we should just let short-term rentals kind of play out for a while before we make a determination on whether we're going to allow it.
This is to prohibit them.
Oh, okay. All for it.
Any further discussion?
I was a little concerned here that we were making this. Okay, let's vote.
All right. All right. Roll call vote.
Commissioner Ward,
You're muted.
Yes.
Commissioner Cohn,
Yes.
Commissioner Broyles,
Yes.
Commissioner Clayton,
Yes.
Commissioner Depler,
Yes.
Commissioner Jackson,
Yes.
Commissioner Helfrey,
Yes.
Chair Beatty,
Yes.
Mayor Boland.
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion carries. Thank you. All right. Next on the agenda, we have PZ 32-21. Mr. Newberry?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. PZ 32-21, Grover Heights, Lot 7A, care of Mike Whalen, Whalen Custom Homes, 338 South Kirkwood Road, Kirkwood, Missouri, 63122. A request for a change in zoning from the NU non-urban residence district to the R3 10,000 square foot residence district for a 0.69 acre parcel of ground, 3 lots of record that is designated the neighborhood edge district of the town center regulating plan and located at the southwest corner of Manchester Road and East Avenue. Street addresses 17014 and 17016 Manchester Road. St. Louis County locator numbers 24V 510452 and 24V 510188. Proposed use, 1 single family dwelling on an individual lot of record, Ward 8.
Thank you, Mr. Newberry. Mr. Vunich?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members of the commission, the department has prepared for your consideration tonight a draft letter of recommendation relative to this rezoning request for this legal but set of non-conforming lots. The rezoning request will accommodate now a single-family dwelling on a approximately 7/10 of an acre site. As part of the discussion on April 4th by the Planning and Zoning Commission, a postponement was made to allow the Department of Planning to engage with the developer owner of the lot relative to an elevation of the proposed dwelling and its appearance. Tonight, the department is presenting to you modifications that have been presented to the developer owner of lot and agreed to. Those modifications on that particular elevation, the south elevation, would include a gable vent in the peak of the roof, extending the stone masonry wainscot from the front of the elevation around to this side of the dwelling, and then finally include a pair of windows to provide natural light into the garage area. Again, the petitioner, owner of the property, has agreed to these via email. Tonight, the letter of recommendation is in the appropriate form for final action by the Planning and Zoning Commission and forwarding to the City Council. If there are any questions or comments, the department would be glad to try to answer them at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vunich. Mayor Boland?
Yes, I just want to thank Mr. Whalen and his team for coming forward with these modifications that were discussed. And I think I raised at least one of them at the last meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion or a motion? Commissioner Cohn?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to approve as recommended by the Department of Planning.
All right, thank you. Second by Commissioner Depler. Any further discussion? Roll call vote.
Commissioner Broyles,
Yes.
Commissioner Clayton,
Yes.
Commissioner Depler,
Yes.
Commissioner Jackson,
Yes.
Commissioner Helfrey,
Yes.
Commissioner Ward,
Yes.
Commissioner Cohn,
Yes.
Chair Beatty,
Yes.
Mayor Boland.
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion carries. Thank you. All right. Next on the agenda, we have an information report. PZ 4-10. Mr. Newberry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A response to a request from the Wildwood Historical Society, care of Charlie St. Ange, regarding PZ 4-10, Wildwood Historical Society, amended conditional use permit in the NU non-urban residence district, south side of State Route 100, west of Hankin Road, St. Louis County, locator numbers 26Y630111, which requests modifications to the governing permit to allow for additional uses at the property, specifically associated with the existing single-family dwelling, with the intent to accommodate an art gallery, professional office, or other compatible accessory activities. Currently, the amended conditional use permit governing the site restricts the use of the dwelling to residential purposes. This site has been placed on the city's historic register, Ward 6.
Thank you, Mr. Newberry. Mr. Vunich.
Ms. Ripito, sir.
Ms. Ripito, sorry. I see that now. Got into old habits.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, the department has prepared for your consideration an information report with recommendation. As Mr. Newberry stated, the Wildwood Historical Society is requesting modifications to their existing conditional use permit. This conditional use permit was originally granted in 2011 and limited to a research library, museum, meeting spaces, and related work areas. The existing single-family dwelling on site was retained for residential use purposes. This conditional use permit has been amended a couple times over the years in order to eliminate requirement for the parking lot to be paved, allow for an addition for a meeting room, and extend the review period from 3 years to 5 years. Now the petitioner seeks an amendment to their conditional use permit in order to allow for additional uses on site. Specifically in the single family home that's currently only allowed to be used for residential purposes. They're seeking an amendment in order to accommodate an art gallery, professional offices, or other compatible accessory activities. The Hankin House, the single family home in question, is a 1950s farmhouse listed on the historic register. The petitioner seeks this request as a means of generating stable revenue to support the organization that's otherwise dependent on private donations and fundraising, and to allow for a lighter use and less impact on the historic building, and as a means to draw more interest and membership to the Wildwood Historical Society. The department has analyzed the request and concluded that although the department cannot support the request to amend the conditional use permit to include professional offices or other compatible accessory activities, because those terms are too broad in nature. However, during the public hearing and also prior to, the petitioner provided information regarding a potential tenant interested in using the space for an art gallery or possibly private art lessons. The department provided an analysis in its report to support expanding the uses in the Hankin House to include an art gallery or specialized private school and or further expansion of the museum. The department concluded that granting these amendments would allow for the property and structures to be maintained and utilized. The impact on surrounding area would be minimal, and the lack of extensive site improvements has maintained the appropriate environments for the site and not increased stormwater runoff to the surrounding properties. The proposed use would require minimal site improvements aside from repairs and or maintenance, which would just improve the site. And the proposed uses are also consistent with the objectives and policies set forth in the master plan that support protection of historic elements, creation of recreational opportunities for residents, and appropriate uses of resources, and adopting regulations to preserve historic buildings and sites. Additionally, expanding the proposed uses would allow for consistent revenue that would support ongoing operations of the Wildwood Historical Society and thus benefit the community as a whole. So in conclusion, the department has found that these uses are customarily found in conjunction with the primary use, are reasonably necessary incident to the primary use, and also subordinate to the primary use. However, that being said, given the limited information received regarding the proposed uses and also concerns regarding the surrounding residential areas, the department would recommend approval of the amendments to the conditional use permit be limited to an art gallery or private specialized school and or further expansion of the existing museum. However, the department would recommend including the conditions shown in the red line document to include limiting the hours of operation, enrollment, expansion, renovations, occupancy permits, and parking. Based upon these considerations, the Department of Planning is recommending that the Planning and Zoning Commission approve the amendments as shown in the red line conditional use permit provided. And with that, the department concludes its presentation. However, if any of the members of the commission have any questions in this regard, the department would be glad to answer them at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ripito. Mayor Boland?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Ripito, is it the case that with respect to the department's recommended changes to the request from the petitioner, that the petitioner is agreeable with those changes, relative to parking and the other limitations?
We actually, I haven't heard from the petitioner in this regard. I don't know if Mr. Funich has, but this is just the recommendation of the department.
With the permission of the chair.
Go right ahead.
Mr. Mayor, Charlie St. Ange, who is the representative for the Historical Society, did contact me, I guess this afternoon, about this particular item, and just noted that they do have an interested party that is very eager to get started and is wondering if they could do 2 readings tonight of this particular matter. I explained to Mr. St. Ange that there are not 2 readings, but we would do our best when the matter got to City Council to speed it up if it is there for approval.
Okay, so are we to construe from that they are agreeable with these changes and limitations, I guess specifically is a better word, that have been suggested by the department?
I'm assuming so. Mr. St. Ange is on the call tonight and certainly has raised his hand to respond, but I assume he would have identified if there was a problem.
Okay, so I would like to know that if with your permission, Mr. Chairman, and then you raised the second question, Joe, second item I was going to mention relative to second reading. We really can't do that, unfortunately, for this at a Planning and Zoning Commission level. But what I can say is that this item, if approved by the commission, will be on the council's agenda for its first meeting in May. And I'm fully supportive of it. I just want to make sure these limitations are not going to hamstring in any way the Historical Society. So with your permission, Mr. Chair, could we hear from the representative for the society relative to that?
I'm agreeable to that. We can bring Mr. St. Ange on.
Mr. Chair, Mr. St. Ange should be here shortly. There he is.
All right. Mr. St. Ange, if you want to unmute yourself, are you agreeable to the recommendations of the department? Go ahead. Is your microphone off? There we go. There's video. Can't hear you.
Mr. Chair, if you don't mind, I could offer a suggestion to Mr. St. Ange.
Yeah, please do.
Mr. St. Ange, where the mute unmute button is, there is a small caret that points up. If you'll click that, you may have some options to select a microphone to utilize.
Or
go ahead.
So, or in lieu of that, if he just wants to give us a thumbs up or a thumbs down, I think we can get the picture as to what he's actually. So Mr. St. Onge, if you're not able to get the microphone to work, if you heard the question, which is whether you're agreeable with these additional limitations from the department, if you could just give us a thumbs up or a thumbs down, I think that would give us guidance. Thank you.
Mr. St. Onge, one thing that happens a lot, you have to unmute your regular laptop as well, along with unmuting on the Zoom call. That might be the issue too.
So Mr. St. Onge, if you could just give us a thumbs up or a thumbs down, that will be sufficient, I think. I would like to know the parking regulations. So he's wanting to know the parking regulations, he said.
Mr. Vunich or Ms. Ripito?
Ms. Ripito.
In regards to the parking regulations, it's kind of hard to tell without having more information about the actual proposed use, and so therefore that would have to be determined at that time. And if there's change in what's currently permitted in the parking, that would have to be done through a site review.
But Mr. Chair, I think it's important, pardon me. I think it's important to note, as part of the recommendation that Ms. Ripito prepared for the department, we are not requiring any new spaces at this time unless, again, there is such a substantial increase that we believe it's necessary.
All right, thank you. And so if we approve this, it'll go straight to City Council, correct?
As you know, given that the Hinken House was originally advertised as just a residence, we did have to do a public hearing. So the information report is the second step in a three-step process. So at the meeting in June, we would have the letter of recommendation back finalized. And then with the permission of the mayor, we would like to hold the public hearing at the next available city council meeting, which would be approximately 7 days later. And then we could even have legislation prepared that day if it's favorable.
So we're.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so Joe, what is it specific, or Ms. Ripito, what is it, what motion are you looking for from the commission this evening? Exactly, if assuming the commission wants to move forward, what would that motion be?
We would be looking to move forward with a letter of recommendation at the next meeting.
Okay, so I would move that we move forward with the letter of recommendation. I'm sorry, I see Commissioner Jackson's hand. I think he was going to do that, so I'll defer to him.
Yeah, I just want to make sure before any motion that we're okay when it goes to city council. So Mayor Boland, is there anything that we need that allows you the flexibility in city council to do what you need to do?
Nothing other than a motion to approve as.
Motion to approve.
All right, Commissioner Helfrey, you're muted.
I'll second that motion, but I do have a question. In the motion, I know that last month that there was a question or a concern by the people from Stovall's Lane that this would not affect their lane and their traffic. And so I just want to make sure that they're protected as we move forward with this. And I guess I would direct that question / comment to Mr. Vunich.
Or Ms. Ripito.
With your permission, Commissioner Helfrey, I defer to Ms. Ripito.
Yes, I'm sorry, it's a habit, so.
As far as the traffic on Stovall Lane, as the conditional use permit is currently written, they're allowed access on Stovall Lane, and our partially responsible for maintaining it. As stated at the last meeting, they will do their best to direct traffic out of their main entrance onto 109. However, that being said, if there's going to be something that generates enough traffic, then that would have to be taken into consideration at that time. Mr. Vunich, I'm sorry, did you have something you would like to add?
Just a couple of points. Ms. Helpfrey, the design of that particular parking area and drive aisle is one way. And so the intent is not to have it as a two-way traffic pattern. And secondly, it was also incumbent that we have it for emergency access as well.
And I appreciate that. I just wanted to make sure that we did address it because it was a concern of theirs in the public hearing. So thank you very much, both of you.
And Ms. Helpfrey, one last comment. I think that is key why Ms. Ripito identified hours of operation so that traffic patterns are predictable and certainly not at odd hours.
All right, Mayor Boland.
Yeah, so I appreciate any residents' concerns relative to traffic, any safety issue. As a practical matter, and this is in Ward 6, where I reside, and I traverse past this particular location multiple times. Respectfully, there are numerous events at Stovall's that result in row upon row of multiple vehicles that I doubt will ever be compared to the Wildwood Historical Society. Thank you.
Thank you. And I concur. All right. Any further discussion? All right. We have a motion and a second. So roll call vote.
Commissioner Clayton.
Yes.
Commissioner Depler.
Yes.
Commissioner Jackson.
Yes.
Commissioner Helfrey.
Yes.
Commissioner Ward.
Yes.
Commissioner Cohn.
Yes.
Commissioner Broyles.
Yes.
Chair Beatty.
Yes.
Mayor Boland.
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion carries. Thank you. All right. Next on the agenda, we have a correspondence item.
Mr. Chair, a review and determination regarding the renewal of an existing conditional use permit, CUP, in the amended CA Plan Commercial District granted by the City Council via resolution on May 13, 2022 for a telecommunication tower and related equipment shelter, PZ 16-99 Sprint Spectrum LP. The Commission must consider renewing this permit on an annual basis. The facility is located on the north side of Clayton Road, east of Strecker Road, locator number 21U 120226, street address 16497 Clayton Road. This particular property is located in Ward 2.
Thank you, Mr. Vunich. Mr. Newberry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, the department would begin its presentation with just a brief slideshow presentation of photographs of the site, which were taken at a site visit that was conducted last week.
All right.
The first of these photographs is a photo of the landscape area around the telecommunication facility. And as you can see, the monopole structure. Next is another view of it from the east side of the facility, looking the other direction. And then the next series of photographs is just to demonstrate the upkeep of the wall structure that shields the equipment that's on the ground. This is of the gate area. The view of the wall, eastern wall. Then again, where the landscape area is. Again, the purpose of the slideshow presentation was just to give an idea of what the site looks like today. The department has prepared for the Commission's consideration a recommendation report regarding this telecommunication facility that's located near the intersections of Clayton and Strucker Road. The original approval of the facility was completed in 2002, And following the initial 5-year review that was conducted in 2007, this facility has received an annual review by the Planning and Zoning Commission to ensure that the upkeep and maintenance of it is good and of a quality that's acceptable to the city. Again, the department did conduct a site visit to the property last week before it prepared its recommendation report. The site is in good condition and meets all of the requirements of the existing conditional use permit or the governing permit for the site. The department does note in its report that there seemed to be a amount of litter at the site that needs to be addressed by the site's owner. And the department's favorable recommendation is based on the site owner addressing that litter and advising the department that such has been addressed. And in conclusion, to the Planning and Zoning Commission, the department is recommending the annual approval and renewal of this telecommunication facility based on the rationales outlined in its recommendation report. And with that, Mr. Chair and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, the department's available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Newberry. Commissioner Jackson?
So the city can't drive by and ask the owners to pick up litter on a regular basis, just as a general policy? I mean, it's under the review and you've got it in there. But if there's litter, it doesn't matter what time there's litter, they need to pick it up.
Commissioner Jackson, the department would concur with your comments. However, we wanted to take the opportunity to address that particular issue as we did the site renewal. I would direct you to the lengthy history of the review of this site. It's not each year that the site is in good condition and doesn't have any other more significant maintenance items that need to be addressed by the site's owner. So these annual renewals have served as a good tool for the commission to take a look at the site as a whole. And the good news for this year is that the only issue is a litter problem and nothing more significant. Thank you.
Okay, do you need anything addended to the motion that allows you flexibility at any time for litter or anything of, I would call small consequence, that allows you to enforce anything like that? Would it help you is all I'm asking before we go down this motion road.
Commissioner Jackson, certainly appreciated. However, the city's property maintenance codes allow the city's code enforcement to address those items at any given time. But thank you.
All right. Any further questions or a motion? Commissioner Helfrey?
Make a motion to approve the city's recommendation.
Thank you. Second by Commissioner Jackson. Any further discussion? All right, roll call vote.
Commissioner Depler,
Yes.
Commissioner Helfrey,
Yes.
Commissioner Jackson,
Yes.
Commissioner Ward,
Yes.
Commissioner Cohn,
Yes.
Commissioner Broyles,
Yes.
Commissioner Clayton,
Yes.
Chair Beatty,
Yes.
Mayor Bull.
He's muted and has his video off. All right. Motion carries without him.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. That one's an 8-0 instead of 9-0. Next on the agenda. Let's see here. Update on the tree preservation code.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. An update to the Department of Planning on PZ 5-21, City of Wildwood Planning and Zoning Commission, care of Department of Planning, 16860 Main Street, Wildwood, Missouri 63040. A request for the Planning and Zoning Commission to conduct a comprehensive review of, then consider potential changes to the City of Wildwood's Municipal Code, Chapter 410, Tree Preservation and Restoration Code, and its associated landscape manual and sustainable plantings guide for the purposes of ensuring such are consistent with current techniques reflective of best practices and accomplish the goals and objectives of the master plan of the City of Wildwood, all wards.
Thank you, Mr. Newberry. Mr. Vunich.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members of the commission, this particular item is just an update. As referenced in the first paragraph of the memorandum, approximately 1 year ago, the Planning and Zoning Commission held a public hearing on the Tree Preservation and Restoration Code, the legislation, as well as the Sustainable Planning's Guide and the Landscape Manual. Over the course of this past year, staff of the Department of Planning has been working very hard in terms of identifying potential problems with the current code and documents, as well as where opportunities might exist in the future. That has required some substantial research that was, for the most part, completed just recently. Tonight, the department just wants to identify those research steps and also some items that it's identified that it would be presenting to the Planning and Zoning Commission in early summer as part of a work session. So tonight, again, just an update. And if there are any questions or comments, the department would be glad to try to answer them at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vunich. Anything from the commission? All right. We don't need to take any action on this, I guess, correct?
No, sir. Again, just wanted to let you know we hadn't forgotten about it and why so much time has passed, but thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you. And then looks like we've got one more thing on occupancy permitting. Mr. Newberry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A report on residential reoccupancy permit requirements for existing single and two-family dwellings and the City of Wildwood's step to consider such for application within its boundaries, all wards.
Thank you, Mr. Newberry. Mr. Vunich.
Again, thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, as you may recall at our last meeting at the beginning of April, Commissioner Jackson identified a concern about the lack of a inspection program for reoccupancy of existing dwellings. At the conclusion of that discussion, the Planning and Zoning Commission asked for an update, so to speak, on where we are and where we need to go. This memorandum is in response to those two questions. Currently, the city lacks a reoccupancy inspection process for existing single-family residential dwellings. It is one of the few in this vicinity that do not have it, although I would note the city of Chesterfield does not require such. And there are rationales for considering it, primarily the master plan and the community services element under policy 11 identifies that a working group should be established to investigate such and see if it's appropriate for the City of Wildwood at some future time. In considering where we need to go, if the commission and ultimately City Council feels that a working group is appropriate, the department has laid out 5 steps for consideration of how that process might move forward. So tonight, the department is responding to the direction of the Planning and Zoning Commission and is certainly available for any comments or questions regarding the memorandum. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vunich. Any comments? Commissioner Jackson?
Of course, I brought it up. So you've got 5 steps laid out. Now, would a working group, Joe, be something that would work toward the establishment of it or of a program for occupancy?
Well, certainly, I think it would be impaneled to kind of see if there are benefits or what are the drawbacks and ultimately make a recommendation. That recommendation then would come to what I believe is, and then ultimately the decision makers. And so, oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, I interrupted you. I thought you were done, but go ahead.
No, I'm finished. Thank you, though, sir.
So in the working group, like some of the roles and responsibilities would be like the reasons why, that I laid out. And here would be the all-in number for 1 to 2 employees that would execute if it came to fruition. Those sort of things would be the roles and responsibilities, an example of a working group.
Yes, the working group would do much of the heavy lifting, pass it on to the Parks and Planning and Parks Committee of City Council, which would then pass it on to City Council. Since there is no zoning component that relates to reoccupancy inspections. I did not identify the Planning and Zoning Commission, but certainly if Mr. Young felt that that was a necessary step, it could be included in this list.
Well, I'm going to yield to Mayor Boland for real quick before I make any more comments.
Well, Commissioner Helfrey had her hand up right after you did. Oh, you're good. Okay, Mayor Boland.
I just have a question, and I must have missed this at the last meeting, and I can't seem to glean from the report. So, in essence, what is the what is the nutshell? You know, what is the objective for the? Oh, I'm sorry. What is the objective for this particular approach or the motion? I mean, what in one sentence are we trying potentially to achieve here?
Mr. Mayor, with the permission of the chair, I believe it is to ensure as properties age, particularly dwellings, that they receive a minimum amount of maintenance, both on the interior as well as the exterior.
Okay. Hang on a second. There's a guest pet here, and he's elderly, and he's coughing right now. Hang on. His name's Riley. He's our guest pet, but good little guy. Anyway, you know, there's scenarios. I know of 2 homes that, like, one of which the county condemned. There's someone living in it right now. There's solar arrays that are going up that are going to have ongoing maintenance that need an inspection. And the best way to do that is on occupancy and resale. There's a lot of antiquated homes that may not be up to code for safety. For people to, you know, when you buy, sell homes are really good times to have a good city inspection. Older homes, railings, so you can hang on, you know, for safety for people. I know when I lived in Baldwin, they had implemented a new codes. There are a lot of electric lines that come into a house that were built years ago that could be touched and it could electrocute people. They just need to raise that level up, right? There's certain codes on that. And the city doesn't have anything of that nature. So that, among a whole litany of things, right? And I'm really the renewables and green. There's a, you know, green, I'm all for it, right? But there's responsibilities, proper disposal of batteries. Is it in good working condition? You know, I'm sure there's fire inspections and they would look at those sort of things as well. But working hand in hand, and I know that's come up in the past that we went down this road at one time of what it would cost to hire people to do the city inspections, but it would just go with buying. I just think it's a best practice. I think our city should go down that road to explore it. And I'll just pause there.
Thank you, Mayor Boland.
So I appreciate Commissioner Jackson's efforts on this, and I'm fully supportive. I would just suggest that if the commission approves this, that we have an understanding that right out of the gate, first thing, the city attorney provides his legal opinion to the group as to what it can and cannot do, number one. And number two, we get a cut to the chase conclusion, recommendation by our city administrator as to the practicalities of this, as Commissioner Jackson just mentioned, because if legally or practically, I'm not saying I'm not supportive of it, but if legally, number one, or practically, number two, it is not workable, I don't know that we need to spend a lot of time on it. We can just move on. If it is, then let's see what we can do and look at implementing it. So those would be my only 2 comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Sure, go ahead.
I concur with the mayor's suggestions. I think the participation of Mr. Young at the early stage is critical, as well as the city administrator. With that, I'd like the permission to bring this back at either the June or July meeting at the latest, after both the city attorney, the city administrator has had an opportunity to review it. I think it's important that the commission get the last kind of bite at the apple before it heads elsewhere. Thank you.
Sounds good. Commissioner Broyles, and then back to the mayor.
Yes, this brought to light something for me. When we sold our house 8 years ago, west of the city on 3 acres, our realtor suggested that we get a fire department inspection. So that was included in what the new owners then would view. That might take some of that inspection that we're talking about. And I don't know if that happens with everyone, but she suggested it and we did it, of course. And that's helpful to the new owner.
One follow-up question, Commissioner Boyles. If you don't mind me asking, was your old home Metro West or Monarch?
Metro West.
Okay, thank you. I only asked because I believe Metro West has an inspection program, but if memory serves, Monarch does not. Mayor Bolin? You're muted. You're muted.
My apology. In light of Director Benich's comments, I would move to postpone this item to the July meeting of the commission.
Seconded.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. We will revisit this in July. Thank you. All right. I believe that is it for tonight. So if no one has anything else, can I get a motion to adjourn? Motion by Commissioner Helfrey, seconded by Commissioner Clayton. All those in favor say aye.
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 All right. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.